Svakiyam Spanakalakutam Jighansayapa Yayadapyasadhri Lebhegatim Dhatriuchitam Tatonyam Kambadayalum Sharanam Vrajema Yasyaikani Shvasitakala Mathavalambya Jivanti Loma Vilaja Jagadandanatha Vishnur Mahansa Ihayasya Kala Vishesho Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yo Brahmanam Vidadhati Purvam Yo Vai Vedanscha Prainoti Tasmai Takvangha Devamatma Buddhi Prakasham Mumukshurvai Sharanamaham Prapadye. Dear devotees, this is the continuation of the Narad Bhakti Darshan explanation which I began earlier a few months ago. And in that 1 week speech, I covered the first 9 or 10 sutras of Narad Bhakti Darshan. So today I'm going to review quickly, give you a quick summary of what we covered before, and then we'll go forward from there. As I mentioned on the very first day in the last speech, whatever I'm explaining, it's all based not on my own interpretation of Narad Bhakti Darshan, but what I've learned from my Guruji, Jagadguru Shree Kripaluji Maharaj. So, based on his explanation of Narad Bhakti Darshan, I'll be explaining to you. So, let's start from the very beginning. What is Narad Bhakti Darshan? Who is Naradji? All these topics we covered, so I'll give a brief summary of that. Naradji's name even has a meaning, a specific meaning. Narasyedam naram naram dyat iti narada. Narad, the one who has the name Narad, is the one who removes the darkness of ignorance of the souls and who graces them with divine love, graces them with bhakti. His name is Narad. And that Narad is actually, sometimes we call him an eternal saint or an eternal sage, but actually he is counted as one of the 24 main dissensions of God. Most people are familiar with Dashavata, the 10 main dissensions, but actually in our Puranas, up to 24 main dissensions of God are described. So when it's expanded to 24, then it also includes Balaram, Naradji, Sanakadik, Rishabh, Dev, Maharaj, Kapil, Bhagwan. These are all other dissensions of God, which are not included in the Dashavatar, but when we describe the 24 main dissensions, they're included. So Naradji is one of those 24 main dissensions of God. So he's eternal. He comes in many different leelas. If you read the Puranas or if you hear stories when you come to Kathas, you hear different stories about Naradji at different times. Like he's giving instruction to Prahlad when Prahlad was in the womb. He's telling Dhruv how to do devotion when Dhruv is going to the jungle. Another time he's coming and, having some discussion with Krishna about some matter. So if you look at the timeline, this is actually over millions of years. Someone might think, how is Naradji on the earth planet for so long? Well, he's an eternal saint. He keeps coming, just like Krishna keeps coming. Yada yada hi dharmasya ityadi. He has many dissensions, and actually the same dissensions keep happening over and over in a regular pattern. So Naradji is a descended divine personality who takes part in many different leelas of Bhagwan, and he himself is a descension of Bhagwan. So when you see all of our Hindu scriptures are eternal, Vedas, Upanishads, these are the foundation of our knowledge of Sanatana Dharma. In explanation of the Vedas, we have other scriptures like Gita, Puranas, Darshan Shastras. These are all explaining what's already been told in the Veda. Now, one of these 18 Puranas is called the Bhagavatam. This is called the Mahapurana. It's the most important Purana. Because in the Bhagavatam, pure selfless devotion to God is taught. In other Puranas, it's a mixture of doing devotion, doing bhakti to God with desire for worldly things, plus following karma kand, doing all the good actions and ritual observances that counts as punya for your next life, mixed in with selfless bhakti also. All of that is mixed in together in the Puranas. But in the Mahapurana, in the Bhagavatam, right from the beginning it's told, Dharma prodhita kaitavotra paramo nirmatsaranam satam vedyam vastavamatra vastu shivadam tapatrayonmulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Kimva Parairishvara Sadyo Hridya Varudhyate Trakritibi Shushrushubistakshanat. The second shlok of the Bhagavatam, where Vedavyasji says, the dharma I'm going to teach you in this Bhagavat Mahapuran, it's kaitava rahit, which basically means doesn't include any mixture of anything. I'm just teaching you pure, selfless bhakti, which captures the heart of Bhagwan and makes Bhagwan forget that he's Bhagwan and he comes under you. That very special bhakti, that's what I'm teaching you in the Bhagavatam, without any kind of mixture. So this Bhagavatam, which is 18,000 shlokas, was given from Shri Krishna into the heart of Brahma. Bhagavatam is also eternal. It's reproduced on the earth planet periodically whenever there's a disruption and things have to begin again. Krishna reintroduces Vedas, reintroduces Bhagavatam, all the Puranas. Now, when he gave Bhagavatam to Brahma, then Brahma transferred the knowledge of Bhagavatam to Naradji. Naradji gave that knowledge to Vedavyas. Vedavyas told it to Shukadeva, and Shukadeva told it to Parikshit, and that was the first public recitation of the Bhagavatam 5,000 years ago. So when Brahma gave the knowledge to Narad, Krishna gave it to Brahma, Brahma gave it to Narad. Naradji received that knowledge in the form of only 4 shlokas. Chatur Shloki Bhagavat, it's called. And Brahma told him, Narad, this knowledge that I gave you, this is Bhagavatam. You expand on that, you write a scripture and expand on this description of bhakti of Bhagavatam in your own style, in your own scripture. So Naradji wrote Narad Bhakti Darshan, 84 codified sentences called sutras. Athato bhaktim vyakhyāsyāmah. That's the very first sutra. So 84 sutras like this, describing bhakti. The same bhakti of the Bhagavatam described by Naradji in a condensed form in 84 sutras. So these 84 sutras explain to us how living in kaliyug, he wrote it especially for the people of kaliyug, how you can do bhakti and survive in this world and go on with your life in this world, but making bhakti both the path that you're following and your supreme goal. You see, there are 3 kand of the Vedas: karma kand, jnana kand, bhakti kand. Kand means sections, parts. So one major part, karma kand, tells all the good actions, how to be a good person in the world, and also all the rituals you can observe that are counted as very good actions that add to your punya so that in your next life you'll get a better destiny. This is all karma kand. Jnana kand relates to Jnana Marg, and the Upasana kand, that relates to bhakti. So Vedas are very extensive, 100,000 mantras in total. So in explanation of each of these kand, there are 2 main scriptures. Explaining about karma kand, you have the Purva Mimamsa Darshan and the Karma Mimamsa Darshan, 2 scriptures written in the form of sutras to explain that. Then for Jnana kand, you have the Uttar Mimamsa Darshan by Vedavyasji, also known as the Vedant. And you also have Siddhant Mimamsa Darshan. This is for Jnana kand. And for Bhakti, we have Chandelier Bhakti Sutra, 100 sutras by Chandelier Maharshi. And we have the 84 sutras of Naradji called Narad Bhakti Darshan. So between these 2, for the description of bhakti, the Chandelier Bhakti Sutra is very gura. It's very difficult to understand the meaning of. So it's not really for the people of Kaliyug. Naradji explained in such a style that would be best for the people of Kaliyug. One time Naradji met with Bhakti Mahadevi herself. Bhakti, divine bhakti in form, met with Naradji and was lamenting that in Kaliyug, Naradji, nobody is following the path of bhakti. Everybody's confused about what is true bhakti. Everybody is so distracted in the world. So Naradji said, this comes in the Mahatmya of the Bhagavatam, he said, Tasmin stvam sthapayishyami gehe gehe jane jane. O Bhakti Mahadevi, I'm going to write such a granth, such a scripture which will deliver bhakti, establish bhakti, gehe gehe, in every home, jane jane, in the heart of every person. So he wrote Narad Bhakti Darshan with this goal in mind. And as I said, Kripaluji Maharaj, my Guruji, explained these sutras, and based on that explanation, which he gave in Hindi, I'm summarizing for you in English as best I can. So Naradji begins by saying, Athato bhaktim vyakhyāsyāmah, which means now I'm going to explain to you bhakti. Actually, he said now after this, because he had written 2 scriptures before. He had written Narad the Smriti, which just told rules and regulations for how to be a good person in the world, Karma Kand. He, after that, wrote Narad Pancharatra, which is a mixture of Karma Kand and Bhakti. So now he's saying, Athato bhaktim vyakhyāsyāmah. After writing these other two books, now I'm going to teach you pure selfless bhakti. So, now he begins. He says, Sa tvasmin parama prema rupa. This is the bahiranga swarup of bhakti. Means, what does it look like from the outside? He says, parama prem. It is ultimate love for God. That is bhakti. So bhakti is love. But actually, Naradji's description of bhakti is not limited to the love of this world, which is an attachment of our mind. It's based on our thinking. He's actually describing a divine bhakti, a divine love, which is a power of God. So there's two kinds of love. There's the love we feel in this world, which is dependent on our thinking. If you positively remember someone many times, you end up forming an attachment to them, which we call love. We feel it in our heart as love. Now that is existing based on our thinking. So if you change your thinking, the love disappears. So it was just a creation of your mind. Actually, that feeling of love was a creation of your mind. You created that attachment, and you can also destroy it. If you start thinking negatively about someone, the feeling of love disappears. So this is worldly love. Divine love is not an imagination or a creation of the mind. It's an actual divine power. So this is what Naradji is describing, this divine bhakti and how we get that. So there's two kinds of bhakti. Divine bhakti, which is the goal, and then the path of bhakti, which we follow to achieve that goal. So he's describing both in his sutras. In the third one, he said, Amrita Swarupaja. This is the antaranga swarup of bhakti. What internally, like if you were to chemically analyze a substance internally, so what is that bhakti on the inside? He says, bhakti is amrit. Amrit, in English we say nectar. So I explained a few months ago when I was here that this amrit word could have a few different meanings. Someone might think, payomritam, Vaidyalog, the Ayurvedic doctors, they call milk as amrit. So bhakti is not that kind of amrit. There's another kind of amrit in Swarg, in the celestial abodes. But I explained that the celestial abodes, Swarg, are part of this Mayic world. We have three places. This physical world called Mrityulok, then Swarg and Narad. So, Punyena Punyalokam Nayati Papena Papam Ubhabhyameva Manushyalokam. You do a lot of punya, you can get a temporary stay, vacation in Swarg. Do a lot of pap, you can get a temporary jail sentence in Narak. Do a mixture of both and you'll be reborn here in Manushyalok, Mrityulok, this physical world. So this is all under Maya, which means it's material, imperfect, limited. Anything within Maya is not divine, it's material. So the Amrit in Swarg, that let's say if you become Indra and you get to drink Amrit, that makes you so that as long as you're in Swarg, you won't feel any pain or sickness or old age or anything. But you can only stay there a temporary amount of time. Even if you stay millions of years, but eventually you come back here. So bhakti is not referring to that. Naradji, when he said bhakti is amrit, he's not meaning that amrit in Swarg. There's a third amrit which refers to liberation, moksha. Actually, bhakti is even beyond moksha. There's another Vedic mantra that says, Amritasya vai putra. All the souls are putra, meaning the children of Amrit, meaning God. This is what Naradji means. When he's saying bhakti is Amrit, he's saying Bhakti and God are synonymous. It's two different ways of describing the same divine power. I went into some detail last time I was here, explaining that God has three qualities: Sat, Chit, Anand. So the Anand quality, that is personal intimate power, Swarup Shakti. That's the power that makes God, God. So because he has three main qualities, Sat, Chit, Anand, his personal power has three ways in which it functions. The Sat aspect of his personal power is his almightiness. The Chit aspect is his knowledge, his perfect knowledge. And the Anand aspect is his blissfulness, his absolute unlimited blissfulness. Now the essence of that Anand, what we call Ahladini Shakti, the essence of that is Bhakti. We call it sometimes Prema Shakti, the power of divine love. It's also called Prema Bhakti, or just Bhakti. So this is an actual power of God, or you can, because a power of God is not separate from God, Bhakti and God are one. In fact, the form of Radha Krishna, we say they're the form of divine love. So Bhakti and God are one. Bhakti Bhakta Bhagavanta Guru Chaturanam Bapu Eka. Even a soul, after becoming a saint, becomes one with God, becomes the form of Bhakti also, the form of divine love. So this is the Bhakti that Naradji is describing, the divine love power. Now actually there's a fifth meaning, which I'll come to in a minute. The fifth meaning is that Amrit means Bhakti lasts forever. It's not something you get and then it's gone. Bhakti lasts forever. Now in the fourth verse, Naradji tells, let's say a soul attains that Bhakti, what happens? He says, Yal labdhva puman siddho bhavati amrito bhavati tripto bhavati. He becomes siddh, number one. So when we hear this word, we know it means perfect. Obviously, if you attain God, you become a perfect personality. It does not mean you get siddhis, although a God-realized saint has the same power as God. Whatever is God's power, a saint receives all of that. But it doesn't mean that's the goal of bhakti, to get siddhis. Siddhis meaning like, let's say someone can levitate, or fly through the air, or walk through walls, or read people's minds. These are all siddhis. So that's not the goal of bhakti. These are actually material powers. Just like swarg is within the material realm, all these psychic powers are also within the material realm. God is actually beyond that. So when you attain God, whatever's under God is also under you. So, of course, those siddhis are also under you at that point, but that wasn't the goal of your path, not to attain those siddhis. The word siddh actually means becoming perfect. Like you cook rice, in the beginning the rice is hard. That's like us now. Our heart is polluted by material past sins, material attachments and desires. So how to clean that? That's like we have that karnika on the inside. When you're cooking rice, it starts to get soft, but if it's not quite perfectly well done, there's still a hard bit on the inside. So inside of us we have that materiality, that mayic quality. Now if you overcook the rice, it becomes like porridge, like halwa. It loses its identity totally. It's just a white mass. You can't even tell, was it rice or was it suji or what was it? But if you cook it just right, there's no hard bit left in the middle, but it maintains its personal identity. This is what becoming siddh means. We even use that term, Chawal ko siddh kar lo means cook the chawal, cook the rice, just right, make it just right. So that's what happens to a heart when we follow the path of bhakti. In the end, we become a perfect personality. We're just perfectly well done. Not overdone, meaning the one who's doing bhakti, he doesn't want moksha. He doesn't want to finish his personality. He doesn't want to just merge into God and finish himself. He wants to attain a union with God where he can relate to God and experience a relationship with God. So that's bhakti. So he has no material quality left in his heart, but he hasn't finished his personality either. His personality is still there, but now he has a divine personality. He's siddh. And he's amrit means he became like God. Bhogamatra samya lingacha. Brahma Sutra says, once you attain God, you get the same experience of bliss. Whatever God is enjoying, you enjoy. Whatever knowledge he has, you have. Whatever powers he has, he gives all of that to you. There's only one difference that remains. Jagat vyapar varjam. The soul is not given the job of srishti. God doesn't say, okay, why don't you create the universe? No, God does that. The soul enjoys the same bliss and knowledge as God, and he may get sent in this world as a saint by God to come and help the other souls to follow the path of bhakti. But he never has the job of doing srishti and pralay and monitoring all the karmas of all the souls and giving them the consequences in the form of their destiny. God does that. So they become amrit, means they become just like God. They become the form of divine love. See, this body right now is material. It's made of material energy, matter. Even my mind is made of mayic, material energy. My soul is divine. So once I become amrit, like God, my mind and my body get replaced, upgraded. Now I get a divine body and divine mind made of the same thing God is made of, Sat Chit Anand. My soul didn't change, but I got a divine mind, divine senses, divine body. So my whole personality now is the form of Amrit. Just like God is Amrit, I'm Amrit. God is the form of divine love, the soul becomes the form of divine love. He gets a body and mind made of that divine substance. And tripto bhavati, he becomes absolutely satisfied forever. But I explained that the satisfaction in bhakti, in the experience of divine love with God, is such a tripti that actually goes, you're satisfied, but you're desiring more at the same time. Otherwise, if you were totally satisfied without desire for more, meaning you're looking at Krishna's beauty, and since he's the form of divine love, and you have divine senses and mind, so you can perceive his divine form, and you're experiencing unlimited happiness in gazing on Krishna. So if you were totally satisfied, you'd look once and you'd stop looking. You'd just close your eyes. But in the field of bhakti, the bhakt, the saint, who's become amrit, he's looking at Krishna and he wants to keep looking and drink in more and more and more of Krishna's beauty. So he's tripped, he's satisfied, but there's a thirst for more. And that goes on multiplying his experience of bliss. So this is the style of tripti in the field of bhakti. In the next verse, the 5th verse, Naradji says 5 things that don't happen once you attain that bhakti. Na kinchit dvanchati, na shochati, na dvaishti, na ramate, no tsahi bhavati. Na kinchit kankshati. He never even feels a little bit of lack. Kankshati means when you see something you don't have and you long for that thing. Once you've attained God, as I said, everything is under God, so you have attained everything. Like Krishna says in the Gita, that Arjun, there's nothing in all these three worlds which is not attained by me already. Nanavaptamavaptavyam varta eva cha karmani. There's nothing worth attaining which is not already mine. It's all under him. The saint also achieves that same level of perfection. So there's nothing more for him to desire. Nothing more for him to personally desire, but he still desires to help the souls who haven't attained God. That desire is there out of compassion for the souls. But he has no more personal desire because he's attained perfection. Na kinchit vanchati. Na shochati. He never ever grieves for anything because what he's attained can never be taken from him. He can never experience worldly sorrow or grief ever again. Na dveshti. He can never experience anger or hatred or jealousy because, again, he's attained the best thing. There's nothing more for him to desire, no reason for him to feel negativity towards anyone. No matter, even if a saint is living in the world and someone physically abuses him, that doesn't change his internal state, which is that he's one with God. So in other words, he's untouchable. Even though he's living in the world, nothing in this world can touch him. Nothing can enter inside and disturb his divine state. Nadveshti. Naramate means, even if the saint is living in this world and he's making use of the worldly things like food, for instance, he doesn't. Ramate means to willingly engross your mind in enjoying something. The saint is always enjoying Krishna's love. So even if he's eating food and it tastes good, it doesn't matter to him. Naramate means he doesn't get engrossed in that kind of thing. He makes use of the world without getting attached to it. And notsahi bhavati, that utsa we feel, that I want this thing to happen and I don't want that thing to happen. The saint doesn't get involved in all of that. He says this thing may happen, that thing may happen. I'll just go on doing the best I can, and what will happen will happen. Notsahi bhavati. In the 6th verse, all of this is review. I'm just giving you a quick review of what we covered last time. Yajgyatva matto bhavati stabdho bhavati atma ramo bhavati. Naradji says on the path of bhakti there's also something you have to know. Yajgyatva. After knowing this, you become matta stabdha atma ram. What do you have to know on the path of bhakti? I thought on the path of bhakti you just had to love God. What is this about knowing? I don't want to have knowledge also. Just keep it simple. Let me just say Radhe Govinda. Keep repeating their name and attach my mind to them. Never mind the knowledge part. Naradji says no, you need knowledge in order to follow the path of bhakti. Any path we call sadhana. Sadhana means something you do to attain your goal. So if it's not done properly, how can you attain the goal? In any worldly endeavor that we undertake, we set the goal and then we see, okay, this is what I have to do to attain what I want, and we live or act accordingly. Why would we think it would be any other way in the spiritual world? We can't just say, oh, sab chalta hai, it's fine, just have faith in what you're doing and it will all turn out right. Well, what if the faith is in the wrong thing? What if you have a brooch that you think is made of gold worth $50,000, but it's actually made of brass? But your faith is firm that this is gold, and when you get in financial trouble, even though it's a family heirloom, you go to the pawn shop to sell it thinking you'll get $50,000, and the jeweler tells you, I can give you $50 for that. Did your faith turn that brass into gold? No, faith doesn't have the power to do that. Faith unites you with the object that you have faith in. So if it's the right thing, you get the right result. If it's the wrong thing, you get the wrong result. So we need knowledge also in order to follow the path of bhakti correctly. Otherwise our faith gets misplaced, or even misused, or abused. So we need knowledge in order to be sure that we're following the right path in the right way. Now our scriptures are for this very purpose. They give us the knowledge. Now these scriptures are so extensive that no one can study all of that in one lifetime. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhuji says, actually you only need to know 3 things. Our scriptures only say 3 things. Veda Shastra Kahe Sambandh Abhidheya Prayojan Krishna Krishna Bhakti Prem Tin Mahadhan. You only need to know 3 things. What is your sambandh? Who are you actually eternally related to? Abhidheya, once you figure that out, how do you get to attain union with that one that you're related to? And prayojan, what is the goal of that? What is the ultimate goal of your existence? So we delved into this and we saw that our only true sambandh, because sambandh means samyak bandhan. Samyak means paripurn, absolute, total, complete relationship. Sambandh means relationship. Now we have plenty of relationships in this world, but none of them are actually samyak bandhan because they're all temporary. Any relationship which is actual sambandh must last forever. So it means no person in this world could have an eternal relationship with any other person. But each soul naturally has an eternal relationship with God. So our relationship with God is our true sambandh. Not only is it eternal, it's not a formed relationship like our relationships here in this world are formed. We're born into a physical situation. This is my mother of this life, but in my previous life I had a different mother. In fact, I could have been the father of my mother in this life in a previous life. So these things go on changing. It means it's not true sambandh. So not only is our relationship with God eternal, but it's also paripurn, which means we have all the relationships in one with God. In this world we have one person as our mother, another as our father, another as our child, another as our husband or wife. We can't have all the relationships with only one person. You need a different person to fulfill each of those relationships. With God, it's not so. We have all the relationships in only one place. So it's a perfect relationship. Whatever way you're feeling, oh, I want him to be my friend. Think of him as your friend. Oh, I want him to be my priyatam. Think of him as your priyatam. I want him to be my child. Think of him as your child. Because you already have all those relationships with him. So he's your true sambandhi. This is the fact. This is the truth. Yet, we've never gotten to meet him face to face. Isn't that astonishing? The only one we're actually eternally related to, and we've never gotten to meet him. If you found out you were adopted, and that your true parents were living in the next house across the street, wouldn't you want to go and meet them? So we know, oh, these are only my temporary relatives in this world. My true eternal relative, I've never gotten to meet him face to face. Then you want to do that. So this is called sambandh gyan. We understand I'm eternally related to God. That's the first knowledge of bhakti. The first knowledge of any spiritual thing is understanding your relationship with God. Then comes a desire. I want to meet him if I'm related to him. So how could I get to meet him? This is called abhidheya, which means the path. What do you have to do to get from where you are to where you want to be? So where we want to be is meeting God face to face. You are my eternal friend, eternal mother, eternal father. I want to meet you. Okay, how to do it? So, although our scriptures tell many different paths, dozens, hundreds, thousands of paths described in our scriptures and by saints, this is very important to understand that not all paths lead to the same place. Every path will take you to a different goal. Let's say someone is following karmakand. What is the ultimate attainment of karmakand? Taking you to Swarg. That is different than meeting God face to face. Meeting God face to face takes something more. You have to go beyond just good actions. Let's say someone is following just the path of yoga. What's the ultimate thing he can get? He can purify his mind and be established in the knowledge that I am the soul, but actually his mind is still material at that point. So he hasn't met God face to face. Let's say someone is doing tapasya, great austerities, and he gains great powers. Again, this is different than meeting God face to face. So, not every path takes you to the same place. In fact, every path takes you to a different place, which is the opposite of what people say nowadays in the world. They illogically try to appease everybody, just be polite and say, oh, all paths go to the same place. Paths are many, goal is one. No. If paths are many, goals are also many. So you can have many goals under Maya. Within this material world, there are many different things that you could attain. You could do pranayam in order to improve the health of your body. You could do yoga in order to improve the health of your body. That's not going to take you to God realization. So there's only one thing that will take a soul right to God. Ved says in one part of a mantra, Bhakti revainam nayati. Bhakti eva means only bhakti. Enam means the soul. Nayati means joins that soul with God. Bhakti revainam nayati. Bhakti revainam darshayati. Bhakti revainam pashyati. Only through bhakti can you meet God, can you see God, can you be joined with God. And I explained the reason for this is that God is beyond any effort that we can do. So bhakti means surrendering to God. Every other path is a path of self-effort, whatever it may be, whether it's doing good actions, whether it's doing meditation, whether it's doing austerities, whatever it may be, it's all our own effort. So the unlimited cannot be attained by any amount of limited effort. The divine cannot be attained by any amount of effort by a limited material being like we are. If we could attain God on our own, it means we're as great or greater than God. If we could know God with our material intellect, it would mean that God is less and we are more. So God is the greatest. God is beyond everything. God cannot be attained by one's own personal effort. But God is kind and gracious. So any soul who submits himself to God, submits his intellect, his effort, everything, surrenders to God, God graces that soul. God accepts him. And when God accepts a soul, he makes that soul a divine personality. So that's bhakti in a nutshell. Well, the path of bhakti. We'll learn more about this throughout this week. But that's what I mean when I say only through bhakti can you attain God. It means only through self-surrender can you attain God, not through any amount of personal effort. So, how will we meet God? What is the abhideya? Only bhakti. And the prayojan, what is our ultimate goal. Why do we want to meet God face to face? The ultimate goal is actually seva. Our soul wants to be with God, to experience a relationship with God, and to get to serve God personally in the divine world. This is what our soul is longing for. Jivera swarupa hoy Krishnera nitya das. Chaitanya Mahaprabhuji summarizes again beautifully in one short Bengali verse, when he says that the soul, because it is part of God and belongs to God, that's our eternal relationship with God, we have a natural desire to serve God. We are His eternal das, His eternal servant. That is not a desire which is made up by the mind. It's inherent in our soul. It's inherent in who we are. All of us desire to love God and to serve God. So that's the ultimate goal, to attain God's divine love and serve Him personally in the divine world. So sambandh, we're only truly related to God. Abhidheya, we can attain Him through bhakti. And prayojan, once we attain Him, we get to be with Him forever in the divine world, enjoy His unlimited bliss of divine love, and serve Him personally as His loving friend or servant or beloved. We can have any relationship we want with Him in the divine world. In Sutra number 7, Naradji says, Sa nakamayamana nirodha rupatvat. So in this 7th sutra, Naradji says that bhakti and kamana are opposites. Kamana means worldly desire. Or in fact, he's saying any desire. This I explained in a lot of detail because it's very important to understand. I'll give you the brief summary. There are different kinds of desires. Let's say someone is just desiring the world, not thinking of God at all. So when we're desiring the world, what's happening? We're creating more worldly attachment. So it means we'll be reborn according to those attachments. If we only keep desiring the world, we'll keep coming back in this world, and we'll keep getting more of whatever we have now, which is not enough. That much we can all agree on. However much I have now, it's not enough. I want more. I want more happiness, more luxury, more comfort. So, in essence, we want the most. The absolute most. That's when we'll stop. That's when we'll be satisfied. So that is only God. As long as we keep only desiring the world, we'll get something, but we'll never get the most or the best. So, desiring the world does not lead to attaining God, and it does not lead to perfect happiness. Now, what if we add God into the picture now, and we pray to God, and we ask Him for worldly things? This also is not the kind of bhakti Naradji is describing. He says, again, if someone is praying to God, it's good, but if they're asking God for worldly things, they're still attached in the world. They're not actually attached to God. So, bhakti means attaching your mind to God. If you really believe and feel that you're related to someone, then you start feeling a love for them. That love is the actual form of the attachment. What you feel is a sign of that attachment that you've formed. So, if we just want to use God to try to get worldly things, it means we don't really feel related to Him. When we really feel related to Him, instead of asking Him for worldly things, we ask Him for Him. Just like I said, you want to meet that, if your mother and father are living across the street, you say, I want to go and meet them. So you want to meet God, you want to be with Him. You want to receive His love. This is one step higher. So there's desiring the world. Above this, desiring the world from God. Now, the next step above this is all bhakti, means worldly enjoyments. The next step above this is mukti. Let's say someone says, God, I don't want this world. I'm fed up with the world. I know the world can't satisfy me. Give me liberation. I never want to be born in the world again. I want to merge into you and go to sleep forever. That we call moksha, absolute liberation. This is also a desire. Bhakti, desire for the world, and mukti, desire for liberation. Naradji says both of these are tyajya on the path of bhakti. Both of these desires should be left behind. We'll be talking about how to live in the world while desiring God. That we'll get to later this week. But as far as moksha, understand this way, that if you get moksha, you don't get God. Because you finish yourself. Your soul leaves behind body and mind and just merges into God with no faculty of experiencing or knowing anything. So it's like going into a divine coma forever, never to wake up. So you're free from the world, but you don't actually get to experience God. You don't get to meet God face to face. You just merge into God and your personal personality is done, finished. Just your soul merges into God. So, sa nakamayamana means don't desire mukti either. Desire something better than that. Desire God. Now there are two ways to desire God. One is, God, you are the form of divine love. You are the form of happiness. I want you. If I see you, that's going to make me happy. If I get a hug from you, that's going to make me happy. So just like we have these kinds of desires from the world, 5 kinds of desires actually. Desire to see, or taste, or touch, or smell, or hear something that's going to make us feel good. Have these same desires from God. When I get to meet God personally, I can experience Him with all my senses. That will not just make me feel good, that will give me unlimited bliss. With every pore of my body, I'll be able to experience that divine bliss. This is also a desire, is it not? Yes, it is. It's still a desire, but now it's a divine desire. So, there's a verse in our scriptures that says, Krishna bhakta sakamopi varonya sevakat khalu nishkamadapi tatkamo yato mokshaya kalpate. That someone who has this desire from Krishna, that Krishna, when I meet you, I want all this kind of happiness from the experience I'm going to get when I meet you face to face. This is sakam bhakti. It has a desire. This verse says that's better than even nishkam bhakti of any worldly person. Let's say you could love someone in this world without having any desire from them, which is very difficult to do, because until we've attained perfect happiness, how can we not desire something from someone else? If I love someone, it's with the expectation that they're going to love me. They're going to make me happy also. But let's say someone could love someone selflessly in this world, what would they attain? They'd attain the world. They'd again be reborn in the world. Because if you get attached to a worldly thing, you're reborn in the world. Now, having a selfish desire from Krishna that when I meet you, I want your love. I want you to give me a hug. I want to be happy in being with you. That's a selfish desire, right? That's better than a selfless bhakti to anyone or anything in this world. Because we've attached our mind to God, who is divine, we're going to attain God. We'll get liberated from Maya, and we'll get an experience of divine bliss, because we'll get a divine body and divine mind, and we'll experience the divine bliss forever. That's why even Kubja was praised by Shukadeva Paramahans in the Bhagavatam. Kubja had that kind of selfish desire for Krishna, that I'll be happy if I get his love. She went beyond Maya. She got entrance to the divine abode. Such a great thing from a selfish desire, but her desire was connected to Krishna. She attached her mind to Krishna. She loved Krishna, so she attained the divine world. Now there's something even beyond this. That's a good thing, but it's not the best. The best is to keep all those desires. Of course, we can't eliminate our desire for happiness, so we're going to desire happiness from God. But the ultimate thing would be, I have this desire, that I desire your happiness. That's a whole other level of bhakti. That's called Nishkam Bhakti. I want to meet you, I want to be with you, I want your love, but in order to make you happy, I want to be with you and serve you, and I'm always going to think of your happiness first. Whatever makes you happy, I'm happy. That is Nishkam Bhakti. So thinking of God with a relationship, that you love Him, He's your friend or beloved or mother or father or child, and desiring His happiness. Try to develop that feeling in your heart. That's true Nishkam Bhakti. This is what Naradji is teaching in Narad Bhakti Darshan. Sa nakamayamana nirodha rupatvat means tat sukha sukhitvam. He said later in the 24th sutra. He says being happy in Krishna's happiness. That's the kind of bhakti he's teaching. So the desire is still there, but we're modifying it or adjusting it. We're saying, I desire happiness, but I want to be happy in your happiness. Then someone might think, then what about my happiness? If I'm only thinking about his happiness, well, the key here is, he is the form of happiness. If you attach your mind to him selflessly like this, he graces you with uncountable times more happiness than if you had a selfish desire from him. That's the way it works. So you won't be bereft of happiness. You'll get even more happiness, a higher standard of bliss than if you had had a selfish desire from him. This is the 7th sutra. The 8th sutra, Naradji says, Nirodhastu Loka Veda Vyaparanyasah. He says this bhakti, he used the word nirod in the 7th sutra. Here he explains it further. He says nirod means renouncing laukik and Vedic karma. Now someone might think laukik karma, that means like what you do to feed yourself. That's laukik karma. Or what you do in to maintain your social circles. Or what you do as part of your family duties. And then Vedic karma means doing like a shrad upon the death of a family member, or the ceremony we do when a baby is born, or when we name the baby, or the ceremony we do at marriage. These are all Vedic karmas, which are considered good actions. Naradji says, once you're doing this kind of selfless bhakti that he's describing, it's actually called Raga Nuga Bhakti. As you're seeing, it's very specific. You might have never thought of bhakti in this way before. This is how Naradji is saying, this is the topmost bhakti. If you're doing this, then Loka Veda Vyaparanyasa. He says that Laukik and Vedic karma, that's beneath this kind of bhakti. This kind of bhakti is supreme. Savai punsam paro dharmo yato bhakti radhokshaje. Bhagavatam. Vedavyasji says that the paradharma, param dharma, the supreme dharma is bhakti. This kind of bhakti Naradji is teaching. So just like everything is under God, so if you attain God, you've got everything, you've attained everything. If you attach your mind to God with this kind of nishkam, pure bhakti, you've already done everything. All the other practices, all the other formalities, they're all under that. So if you're worshipping God with this kind of bhakti Naradji is describing, you've already done everything else. It's all included in that. Now someone might wonder then, how will I physically live in the world if I'm renouncing laukik karma? And let's say I renounce Vedic karma It might look bad. People might say, why aren't you doing these religious formalities anymore? Yes, there are some considerations like this, which Naradji addresses in the 11th and 12th sutras that we are going to study in the days to come. So he does address this, how to live in the world, how to combine all of this in a favorable way that's favorable to your bhakti and your progress on the spiritual path. Now, we come to the 9th verse, which is the final one that we had looked at the last time I was here, where Naradji says, Tasmin nananyata tad virodhi shudasinata cha. That there's another important shart, a condition. In fact, the two most important conditions of bhakti, one is nishkamata. I just covered that. The desirelessness. Just having one desire for his happiness. That's number one. Number two is ananyata. Ananyata means loving him and him only. Now there's a couple questions that come up with that. Naradji is saying ananya. Anya nahi. No other. Not having your mind attached anywhere else but the form of God that you're worshipping. So someone might say, what, you mean I'm not allowed to love my family? Why is Naradji telling me only to love God and not to love my family? And then ananyata even means something more than that. It means be ananya to one form of God. So someone might think, one form of God? There are so many forms of God, you mean I can't worship all of them? I only worship one form? Then what will the other forms say? What will they think?